So if you've turned on a TV at all this week, you've likely seen the wall-to-wall coverage of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the sexual assault accusations against him. But in the midst of all the media madness, which also includes a major hurricane slamming into the Carolinas, Donald Trump's former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, cooperating in the Russia investigation, and major escalations in the trade war with China, it can be easy to miss some really important stories like this one.
The U.S. government has lost track of nearly 1,500 migrant children.
You heard her right. You might remember back in April, the Department of Health and Human Services announced they had not been able to find close to 1,500 kids who crossed the border illegally by themselves, were processed by the U.S. government, and then released to a sponsor. Well, now the New York Times reports federal officials have lost track of another 1,500 such children, bringing the total number of minors the U.S. government cannot find to nearly 3,000. This doesn't necessarily mean these kids are missing in the traditional sense, but it does mean immigration officials don't know where they are, and much more importantly, whether they're safe. You know, after these kids are released to their sponsor, usually a parent or family member, the government calls to follow up and make sure everything is okay. But in these 3,000 cases, no one has answered the phone. Often that means the kids or their sponsors are afraid of being deported, a legitimate fear these days. But sometimes it has much more alarming implications.
A human trafficking bust at an egg farm.
Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Their paychecks kept by their traffickers.
Earlier this week, Pablo Duran Sr. pled guilty to human trafficking for forcing 8 teenagers who were released into his custody in 2014 to work for no pay, as you heard, at this egg farm in Ohio. Released from the government right into the arms of human traffickers. But of course, this is just the latest case of the federal government failing immigrant children. There are still those 500 kids in federal detention centers, 22 of them under the age of 5, still separated from their parents nearly 2 months after a court-ordered reunification deadline. For most of the kids, their parents have already been deported, and immigration officials don't know how to get in touch with them either. In the end, when it comes to immigration, we can argue about the adults till we're blue in the face, but these kids deserve better. Even as Brett Kavanaugh, Paul Manafort, and Donald Trump dominate the headlines, we have to be the ones to remember and care about what happens to them, because it's pretty clear the president and his administration do not.